guy asks the other man to stay there, wanting to know who he is and warns him that she is their colleague. However, the old man just gives him one look and once again Director Kim is attacked. Oh, the poor guy, man. Every person who shows up beats him up, my boy. It's a good thing our boy cushioned the blow so the guy wouldn't die, but geez, his ribs got torn up and the not all peculiar old man went over, took the girl's face in his hands, and said the child will be taken with him. She might not have a good foundation, but with the talent she possessed for consciousness, he can awaken her power. She's crying, calling out for the two of them, but the guy says it's best for her to abandon these connections with the world, especially now that he has already made this offer. At this, the two are flying, and apparently he's going to kill them to force her to accept. She, however, says she accepts if he doesn't kill them. Better that way. The old man says it's good for her to forget all the connections she has with the world, and she says that's fine. He lets the two of them go, but then suddenly aims in their direction, saying that if he leaves them alive, she will remain connected forever. Ah, phew. He opened a portal there for them to return to a nearby city. Humble, right? The other guys who came didn't even do that much for the boys. Well, it's true they didn't have much of a choice either, because in reality, they were just sucked into that thing. And through the strange old man's little ring, they could only hear the girl calling for them. But goodbye. The two of them wake up in the middle of an abandoned place, hearing people selling scriptures, selling cloth in a place called Yangak. See opens his eyes there in the alley, wondering where exactly he is. Ah, in his past life, he didn't fall into this place, so unfortunately, he doesn't know it. Apparently, that old man told the truth. He threw them into a random place. However, for some reason, he still felt as if it were a little familiar. Shielding his eyes from the sun, he finally recognizes the place where he had once lived for a while. The famous capital of Wanga, the city of Sukyam. From what I've understood so far, our boy has no powers at all, except for the fact that he can regress. So it's the competition of the talented against the boy who goes back in time. A short time later, they're still in the alley talking, and the old guy says he can't take it anymore. He's going crazy. Siu comments that he feels the same way and wish he could wake up as if it were all a dream. The poor old guy scratches his little hair and says that now they're screwed, only the two of them are left. At least maybe they should be relieved, right? That they weren't taken by those monsters. Siu, however, doesn't think the same way. He may have gone back to the past, but he remembers that following this path, he was nothing more than an herb collector who got beaten up every day. He then says that whatever the future holds, they can't just stand still in this alley forever, so you know, at least they have to get out of there. The city is vast, but Kim doesn't understand anything these guys are saying. It seems like everyone is commenting about them, since they're kind of being stared at, but he has no idea what about. At this, Siu says they're commenting that the clothes they're wearing are funny. Ah, everyone around is speaking Chinese, but the two of them are Korean. So the guy is a bit confused, but Siu says he learned Chinese when he was younger. The old man, however, seeing the boy's torn up back, is more worried about that than the fact that he speaks two languages. And the bastard lied, it's not even Chinese they're speaking. The symbols are kind of similar, but the sounds are completely different. In his past life, he spent 2 months being chewed out by beggars just to start understanding what these guys were saying. However, now there's no reason to worry about that. He says that first it's time to get new clothes, but the guy is already unsure. How are they going to manage if they have no money and can't even communicate properly? However, the clever devil went to an herb shop and threw that fat ginseng into the old man's hand, who was shocked. He immediately let him know that this yellow bamboo root was over 800 years old, so he better pay a good price for it. The old guy immediately offers 15 silver ingots, that's some serious bars, and seems like a hell of a lot. Even Siu is surprised. It seems that in his past life he never managed to accumulate so much money. I thought he was going to try to negotiate to show he knows the values, right? But the bastard was a really broke beggar man. He just accepts. A short time later, they're already in a big-ass house that our boy seems to have rented or bought, and he already tells Mr. Kim that he's going to teach him the language of this place. It seems everything worked out well and quite easily. However, that right there is the power of money. The problem is that to get this house, plus fake identities for both of them and clothes, he spent almost everything. He's left with one little silver ingot, and the director can't help but notice that the boy's back is still bloody. Good heavens, go take care of that. It's going to get infected, and you'll have to reincarnate again. At this, Kim says he's going to stop calling our boy manager, and that from now on, he'll be Siu Yun. A little later, he explains that the reason they got all this money was because of those herbs. The problem is, they're going to run out of money when the herbs run out. So the first and most important thing is to find a way to earn money consistently. Mr. Kim already thinks they can sell the rest, save up some money, and start a business. Siu knows that this guy used to manage a relatively large company, so it's not a bad strategy. It'll allow them to live. But just living is no longer enough for him. He went back in time, and in this life, he's going to dream big. He knows that besides that, Mr. Kim is a martial genius. By reading some cheap, random street books, he managed to become a master in a few months. A short time later, he got some more advanced techniques and became one of the greatest masters in this world. But what if this guy learned the advanced techniques right from the start? Maybe he could anticipate the birth of the most powerful swordsman this world has ever seen by at least 30 years. and obviously, with that, you will benefit to the maximum while he is close to him. At this, he calls for the director and comments that in this world, he seems to be realizing that this thing called martial arts is very relevant. Considering that, probably if they start any kind of business and have any success, they will need to know how to defend themselves. Director Kim says he's heard of that stuff before, but as far as he knows, martial arts are only taught to those who belong to a sect. So how are they going to learn? Our boy already notices that the man knows a little about the martial world. He's not completely lost. He explains that in this city, there are 7 famous sects. There are the Demon Slayers, the Blinding Sect. No way am I going to say the names of all 7. We'll never remember them. But it looks like I'm going to have to, because the Demon Slayer sect uses sword and blade techniques. There's the Buddhist temple, that fights kind of with those Karate Kid moves. There's the House sect, which are the smart ones, and the sect of the 7 mysteries. It seems 3 of these are demonic sects, and not much is known about them, other than the fact that they have proficiency with witchcraft. And obviously, they do a lot of illegal things. He asks which of these Kim seems to like the most. Gu replies that he likes, obviously, the Demon Slayer sect. A true master in a place like this has to use a sword and learn blade techniques. Kim is impressed. He didn't even need to convince this guy to follow the exact same path he took in his other life. Kim wants to know, however, how does he already know all this? Our boy says that when he was negotiating and getting the identities, he overheard some guys talking. And man, our first time skip happened. 3 months. In front of the sect, the guys ask what they're doing there. Our dear Seo there on the left and says he brought his older brother, who is interested in learning martial arts. The Rock in a Goku outfit doesn't seem very excited about it. However, he sees from their clothes that the guys must have a good amount of money and they're in need of it. Even so, he apologizes and says that learning martial arts at this age would be almost impossible. Our dear Seo insists, asking to at least see someone from the higher ranks, already slipping him a coin. A while later, already inside the sect, someone wants to know if they really just want to learn for self-defense. Our boy brought a feast of silver ingots and says yes, that's all they want. The moment the old guy sees the money, he says it's all right, they can be external disciples. However, they should know that there's no special treatment there for those who enter through donations. Besides, they would only accept one of the 2. Kim is about to complain about this, but right then our boy accepts, saying it's perfect for them. The guy is already leaving, saying, okay then, just come find him there and join the rest of the disciples. Kim asks our boy if it's okay for only him to be learning martial arts. He would have chosen a different group if he had known it would be this expensive. Our boy tells him not to worry, he was never very good at sports either. While he's going to handle the business for now, Kim will go there and learn a bit of those so-called martial arts. The old guy thanks him but says he doesn't know if he'll really be able to learn much. Our boy tells him to trust himself and try before judging. Another time skip. 7 months later, the competition within the sect. The man on the throne wants to know where this guy came from. Obvious, it's Mr. Kim who has crushed all the disciples who have been in this sect for years. Mastering a martial art means understanding its true meaning and aligning your body with it. Someone with low knowledge at best becomes a third-rate warrior. And to advance from that point on, you need more and more knowledge. The guys attack him, saying he's an outsider and will never beat them. Obviously, more knowledge means you've invested more time and also put in more effort. However, certain people had enough talent to laugh in the face of all this knowledge business. They had enough talent to advance through numerous stages at once. The Demon Slayer sect is already famous for having numerous members like that. But for the first time, an outsider appeared and killed all of those so-called great disciples. In just 7 months, Director Kim became a first-rate warrior who had mastered absolutely all the techniques of that place. The old guy bites himself. He doesn't understand how it's possible for someone to evolve so quickly. To force something like that, they would need to gather countless martial artists to support someone. Not to mention that this guy is an outsider who has never had any contact with martial arts. So how did this happen? It was as if the very tradition of that place had kneeled before this man. Whoa, and they gave the order to capture him. There's our boy. He already imagined that this could create a problem, an outsider dominating this place in 7 months, leaving everything in chaos. Because of this, the guys are accusing him of being a spy, but even imprisoned, the Slay Dog is practicing. What Seo doesn't understand is why he's also imprisoned. He knows nothing about martial arts, and now he's in there with the other guy. Our boy asks if the director isn't worried, man. A lot of people suspect he's a spy. Normally, in these kinds of stories, they'll destroy his martial arts, cut off an arm, or somehow prevent him from being able to fight. The director, however, replies that he already knows about that. But for some reason, he feels that continuing to practice is the only way to get past the next barrier. And inside, he already knew that upon passing this one, he would advance to the next stage. Seo knows how incredible that was. Being a first-class warrior was already impressive, but advancing beyond that is something only the masters of the sects can achieve. This was already a level where at most there are 1,000 men with this strength in this world. Not to mention that, after this, the only thing left is the peak, where you are basically untouchable. Right then, Seo is certain this guy is going to be at the top of the world, not 30 years earlier than he imagined, but about 40 years faster. 7 days later, there's manager Kim with little flowers flying around him, absorbing energy as Seo already knows that this is the key that only appears in martial artists nearing the peak. At this, Kim stands up announcing that he has crossed the barrier and now he's no longer afraid of this sect's leader. Our boy praises him, says his talent exceeds what he expected. The old guy says he's also impressed with himself. He didn't imagine he had this kind of talent. Maybe it was because when he was a child, he read countless martial stories. Right at that moment, some guys rush in, announcing that the time has come. They had received orders from the leader to destroy his energy core. That's because they are now certain he's a damned member of the demonic sect. Kim gives them a look and our boy, tries to calm everyone down, saying he already confessed that no one there is a spy. The guy just tells him to shut up and punches him in the face, warning that he's already heard them talking in that coded language and is sure they are not honest people. However, at this, Kim has already drawn his sword and slash, his hand is cut. The cut was so precise that he didn't sever the hand, but he disarmed the guy. And the bald guy warns that he's already made it clear this was his first sect. The Rock Goku comes to slash with his sword, but in a few seconds, everyone had received the same little tap on the hand and dropped their swords. Everyone is already running desperately down the corridors, saying that strangely he seemed to be at the peak of martial arts. At this, Kim calls for our boy and warns that he's going to other sects to train and wants to know what he's going to do. Our boy, not being a fool, says he's going to follow him. They could go, for example, to the unorthodox dragon sect. The old guy says he'll meet him there, and in the next scene, he's already at the top of the mountain. And damn, Kim's sword is already bathed in blood. He asks why it took Seo so long, and he laughs, saying that yeah, the director is a little faster than him. And noticing the state of the sword, he already knows that this guy was not a violent person at all, but this world has already changed him. It would be a dream if one day he could return to the peaceful life on Earth. If he could choose a return, it would be there. He's tired of the violence of this world. However, none of that matters, because now he's here and he'll do whatever is necessary to survive. After being betrayed by the first sect, they invaded the dragon's house and took over everything. 2 years later, they ventured into the Wanga region and continued to defeat numerous sects. And it was in the 3rd year that all the emblems of all the sects had been cut down by him. Before long in that region, he was named the strongest martial artist under the heavens, and he used this fame of his to unite the sects and form an alliance. Man, 7 years later, we're moving along here, huh? He and the director were as close as brothers, ignoring the age difference between them. They even managed to work on a specific martial art for our boy. Mr. Kim hands him the book and says the name of the technique is the Mountain Cutter. He had made this with our boy's talent in mind and is sure he can reach the peak. Seo seems impressed that technique was really above any other he had ever seen. The only problem is obviously the expected one. He had absolutely no talent. He was learning from the most powerful martial artist under the heavens, who created a martial art specifically for him and only him. And even so, he barely managed to become a third-rate warrior after a whole year of practicing. At this, he says that maybe there's no way. He has a talent for medicine, and apparently, that's the way to live life. Each person has talents in different areas. And with that, on the first day, after a decade had passed, he glimpsed the level he had only heard about in legends. The 5 energies of the world converting into a single person. The old guy has a fit and starts contorting. What's this? His hair grew long and turned black. Seo calls for the old guy, and suddenly the guy is handsome with long hair and muscular. This was the so-called skeletal reconstruction that creates a new body. Next chapter, our boy says that the guy, is looking younger than him, and Kim responds that he really does feel full of life, as if he could do anything. Our boy congratulates him, saying the world is going to be scared of this skeletal reconstruction. At this, Kim stands up and says he'll have to pass on the succession of the martial alliance to someone else soon. Our boy wants to know who he's thinking of, and the guy says that there are some talented people, but no one really understood the essence of martial arts. Seo comments, that he's the only one extraordinary enough to know what that really is. If he's expecting to find another genius like himself, it's going to be difficult. Kim, however, looking out the window, said that even when trying to lower his expectations, there was no one who was worthy. And we've jumped forward another 15 years. It's been 35 years since our boy began his life on the path of ascension, and now he's already 65 years old man. He's curious to know what Kim is doing. A year after the skeletal reconstruction, he passed on the position of leader to someone else and left. He wanted to be able to retire with that guy, but he had to stay in this place to take care of the strategic part of the alliance. Kim said he'd like to travel through this world much more. Maybe that's why he couldn't come to our boy's retirement ceremony. He's walking through the garden saying that this place is too silent and quiet. He bought this beautiful mansion with the money he got from his retirement. The only downside is that it was too big, and he was all alone. At this, there's someone there in the middle of the bushes, and when he takes a look, it was Kim. I'm still not used to him with long hair. Our boy wants to know where he's been and why he's only showing up now. However, he just falls back onto the grass and calls out for Seo, and he tells him that he really believed he was blessed in martial arts. Our boy says that of course he was. If he's not a genius, who would be? His friend replies that yes, in this world of common mortals, he really was not ordinary. The protagonist laughs, of course he wasn't ordinary. However, Kim then says that he fought against a true practitioner, One of those from 35 years ago, like that guy who flew and took their friends. Siva knows that these guys don't reveal themselves easily. They are like shadows that control the entire world from the darkness. And as the martial alliance they created gained more and more power, these guys started wanting to influence them. No one could stop these guys because opposing them was like opposing the nation itself. And that's why any rule given by them was obeyed. That's why Kim left this place. He wanted to fight against these guys as an individual and not as a master, especially since that could affect the alliance. Kim then says that they were extremely difficult to find, but he located one. Most ignored him, saying he wasn't worthy of a fight for being immortal. They all disappeared, used illusions, and none of them wanted to fight. However, 5 years ago, he finally got a duel. Siu asks if he won, and the guy says he won. The protagonist praises for not being the leader and doing this, otherwise they would have paid the price. Kim then says that he put his whole life on the line in the fight against this guy, and all he managed to do was a small cut on the tip of his finger. The truth is, the guy made a bet that if he made even the slightest cut, he would theoretically win, so that's kind of how he was considered the winner. Steto right then says this guy must have been one of the top 10 strongest, something like that. However, unfortunately, that wasn't the case, man. He was actually at the stage of one of the weakest. In comparison to mortal martial artists, this guy was basically like someone who just entered the second stage, extremely basic. Siu says that's impossible. He already knew that in his past life, these guys were ridiculously powerful creatures. However, he's sure that Kim is someone who has reached the pinnacle of humanity. He could deliver numerous cuts while seeming to float and was untouchable. This guy in front of him was a genius, so how did he only manage to cut the tip of a random cultivator's finger? And at this, Kim tells him that he has lived his whole life as a frog in a well. They don't stand a chance against these guys who are basically walking natural disasters. However, he has something to say. Even so, today he cut off one of their hands. Our excited boy asked if he managed to win, and he says no. The guy put a talisman on his hand, regenerated, and that was it. The problem is that now he realized he has reached the limit of martial arts, and today he's here to say goodbye to our boy. That's because when the guy saw his willpower and his training, he said he would accept him into the sect. He would no longer be a martial artist, but would instead begin the path of immortality. Sio says that's impossible. To become a cultivator means to abandon mortality. However, something like that can only be done if the person possesses a spiritual root. And Kim then explains that his skeletal transformation is basically him reaching the same level of talent that a cultivator is born with. Someone as brilliant as him needed to train his whole life to reach the minimum that these guys possess. He makes a cut in the void and says he's leaving. The crazy guy is literally entering another planet, saying he's going to leave one last gift for our boy. Before he can respond, he's left with the scroll and the guy has disappeared. The manuscript was a record of how to transcend and achieve cultivation through martial arts. Stu, however, wanted to know where his friend was going without him. And with that, time passed. Once again, there he is coughing, saying that this world is cruel. It's been 50 years since he arrived in this world. However, there he is again, dying from a random cold, just like in his past life. Destiny was something that it seemed a human, no matter how much they tried, could not escape. In the end, the only thing that changed was the house and the clothes, but he died on the exact same day. At this, he is sure he lived life to the fullest. He didn't want to have any regrets like in his past life, so he kept himself as busy as possible, studied as much as possible, practiced as much as possible, and never even bothered with marriage or normal things. It was because of this that he managed to unite all the martial sects in the region. He achieved fame, wealth, and everything the mortal world had to offer. So why now at this moment did he have a feeling of emptiness? Could it be that if he and Kim had tried even harder, they would have reached the heavens? Unfortunately, his body will not find that answer. All he could feel was a deep sense of powerlessness. Truly, it was another life of disappointments. This marked the end of the second regression and the arrival of a like on this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell and mount. Last note, I'm excited to see what else this series has to offer, man. He's going to live several different lives, enjoying different things, and what the conclusions will be. What will he learn in each one of them? Interesting. So there's potential here. I don't know about you, but I see this potential, you know. That's it, Saya.